residential property management entrepreneurs. For over a decade and a half, we have brought innovative strategies and optimization to the property management industry. At DoorGrow, we are on a mission to transform property management business owners and their businesses. We want to transform the industry, eliminate the BS, build awareness, change perception, expand the market, and help the best property management entrepreneurs win. Now, let's get into the show. In today's episode here on the DoorGrow Show, we have Leigh Angman, serial entrepreneur, business strategist, author of SPRUCTIS, From Insight to Action, with over 20 years of experience founding and scaling companies across hospitality, tech, and real estate. Leigh is going to be sharing his practical framework for small to medium-sized business success, and we're going to dive into a bunch of topics like mindset, delusional optimism, and the Pleasure Utility Determinant, PUD, for redefining success and the best free technology tools entrepreneurs can leverage to scale smarter. Leigh, welcome to the DoorGrow Show.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. So where I'd love to start is, why don't we dig into your background? I want people to get a feel for who you are and how you sort of arrived where you are right now in life in your entrepreneurial journey. How did your entrepreneurial journey sort of start?
I like to talk about the first taste of entrepreneurialism that I got. I was 6 years old, and I was at a rodeo in the north of British Columbia, province of British Columbia. I'm Canadian up here. And I was sitting with my family and watching, this was, 40 something years ago, and watching rodeo events. And my father just kind of leaned over to me and he said, "Hey, take a look around. What do you see?" And I saw, of course, a bunch of recyclable bottles that the friendly patrons of this rodeo had been consuming during the day. And he said, if you round those up, because they're just at people's feet, and you take them back to the point of purchase, they'll give you, for X number of bottles that you bring out, they'll give you a quarter. And I said, "You kidding me?" He said, "No, go ahead." So I started and excuse me, can I get that? Can I get that? Remember, I was only 6 years old at the time. So I'm trying to make it sound so mature and refined when I was doing it, but started to do this. And by the time I'd got, let's say it was, 10 or whatever, a dozen, I'd take it back and I got a return, and I was immediately hooked. I could not believe that I could just go around and make money, because in those days, you could trade money for candy. That was the best thing that any child could possibly imagine. Long story short, I'd forgotten about the events of the rodeo very, very quickly that day, and quickly refined my strategy, started to get my brother to help me try to find some other kids. Didn't tell them what I was making, but of course, if I got them to do stuff, they could bring it to me. I could return the stuff and I'd give them 10 cents or something. So it was very interesting. And I certainly recall thinking about that beautiful sunny day many times, 12, 15 years later, when I was working at a fast food restaurant or a gas station. It was, in those days, no matter how hard I worked, I got paid the same. And I much, much preferred that original story of being back and being able to work harder or work smarter. And it took several years after working in restaurants to get into the entrepreneur world. But it's been over 25 years now since I have been kind of owning and operating businesses. And I like to say that the worst possible definition of hell that I can imagine is being at a desk on Monday morning at 9 o'clock simply because Mr. Johnson tells me that I have to be there. So that was how I got a taste of it, and it's certainly refined over the years.
All right. Well, let's see if we can all win against Mr. Johnson. So, all right. So, cool. Well, let's get into the topics at hand. Where should we start? We could start with the SPRUCTIS, or we could start with, some of your mindset things.
Sure. They all flow from the book. I took 2 years and launched last November, 2 years to write a book. I found myself evolving processes that have been applied to various businesses that I have owned and operated, been a part of. And most recently, I've owned restaurants and pubs in Vancouver for 23 years now, give or take. And what I like to say, and when I'm speaking to other entrepreneurs and business owners about this, is do you know what your profitability is every 2 weeks? And if they say yes, then there's not much I can do to help them. But you'd be surprised how many entrepreneurs that operate small to medium businesses. And I define that as something that does up to about $15 million in annual revenue.
Okay.
You'd be surprised how many of those people don't know what their profitability is until, a couple of weeks after their chartered accountant delivers them their financials at the end of the year. And it's a terribly frightening concept for me to absorb, that you cannot make intelligent decisions about your business if you don't know what your financial health is. So SPRUCTIS, which is the name of the book that I wrote, which stands for Systems, Processes, Redundancy, Urgency, Communication, Technology, Integrity, and Sales, is really a framework that covers a lot of those things that are defined by the individual letters of the word. But one of the very most important parts of it in there, it clearly defines a framework that we have built collectively. When I talk about we, I'm talking about some very important people in my life, but that has been refined over the last 15 or 20 years, that allows us complete insight into the business. We know what our profitability is to the penny every 8 to 14 days. And if there's anything that someone takes from that book, it's a very clear roadmap to exactly how to do that with any kind of a self-owned business. So
Yeah.
that's the core foundation for the book.
I love the idea of focusing on profit. I've had Mike McAllowicz on the show, and he
Yep.
has the book Profit First. So I don't know if you have any way to connect this to that in any way, positively or negatively, how you feel about that. But I know that just even a business setting aside a certain amount for profit so that they actually have some profit is a great, like, really large baby step that they need to take. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and one of the things I say to my partners all the time when I deliver them news about, where we sit financially, you don't turn a profit every single period or every single month. We operate on 4-week periods for various reasons, but just knowing where you are, even if you're in a loss, um, it's just knowing that position in which you sit that allows you to make those intelligent decisions about how to support the growth and sustaining of your business.
got it. Yeah, love it. All right. So should we go through the framework or?
Absolutely, we can,
Okay.
sure. The systems and processes part of things is, it has a lot to do with the various systems for sales and HR and, accounting and
Yeah.
strategy and all that kind of stuff. Really, the other topics all feather into them, and there's cross, referencing to each one of them. But yeah, quickly I'll go through them. Redundancy is not in the way that people are made redundant and made irrelevant, but it's always about not siloing your brilliance and being able to ensure that there's not one really smart person in the business that only knows how to do a particular amount of things,
Yeah.
that nobody else knows. So if they are lost for any particular reason, the business is in dire need of or in big trouble. One sidebar on that is, I always say the only way that I've been able to find success in the last 25 years of owning and operating businesses is to surround myself with people that are smarter than I am. And it's not difficult to do. But, really, I am not aware of any entrepreneur, and maybe AI is changing this, but to date, I'm not aware of any entrepreneur that has created a massively successful business exclusively on their own.
Yeah.
So that idea that there's some very smart people in your business is critical for its success, so that they can do things that you're not talented at. Obviously, each person in that equation has to bring something to the table, and they can specialize it. That can be specialized in it, and that can be their area of core competency. But they should absolutely share and document the items that they specialize in, that could allow someone else to take over. That's a lot harder to do if you've got an incredibly talented, say, Red Seal chef that runs your business in that regard and is a partner.
Right.
I like to believe anyone can learn accounting, but My background and that I spend the most amount of my time dedicated to is the corporate finance side. So
Mm.
all of the things that I do are documented very, very clearly, so that if something happened to me, God forbid, that someone else could take over in that specific regard. So there's one example of it. Urgency is kind of moving on. So we've got SPRU. Urgency is something that is very, very important in any business relationship, whether it's in the sales side of things, whether it's in communicating to your employees, your partners, your potential customers. There's few things worse than the idea of starting a business quote and having someone wait for feedback that you have for you. Urgency also for them. Urgency also factors its way into lots of other things. A perfect example is, if you're looking for a permit or a license for something, and you reach out to a city hall. I've had this happen before. I say, hey, Jim, have you got that permit? Have you taken care of that we want? And they say, well, no, I called city hall and that person's on vacation. I'm like, okay, so what did you do? Did you follow up with their superior? No, I'm just waiting for him to call me back. It's the wrong answer. You know what I mean? There's lots of examples where urgency is very, very critical. And I spoke about how these topics intertwine with each other: urgency in communication, urgency in systems and processes that that you were involved with, urgency in your sales. So you could see how all of these kind of things start to cross reference each other in a bit of a matrix. So SPRU, C, communication, obviously it's critical for everything that you do in business and personal relationships. It's about, really, I speak about the various methods of communication, and a simple concept of speaking with someone as opposed to talking to someone. Very finesse difference between those two sets of two words. But the idea that you're speaking with someone, you're having a conversation. These are just random ideas that are popping into my head about these various topics. But obviously, the book
Yeah.
fleshes them out more. Technology is an incredibly important part to any business. I've watched it change. My father worked in the sales industry, in the pharmaceutical industry for his entire career. I remember when he got a fax machine. I remember when they got voicemail for the first time. These were and it almost sounds ridiculous if you've got anyone under the age of 45, listening to your podcast,
Yeah.
that email didn't exist, or voicemail, or literally even answering machines. He
Right.
existed in a time where if you were gone on Friday, that was it. You didn't. There's a lot to be said for the glory of those days. You weren't harassed over the weekend, but technology starts to evolve, and we're obviously in a time where communication is 24/7. Your ability to get information from the internet is 24/7. But leaning into that kind of technology, AI is a perfect example of the modern version of the latest and greatest advents in technology.
Yeah.
You have to lean into these new technologies, or else they're not going to be. You're just not going to flourish. You're not going to be able to sustain your business. So
Right.
that's SPRUCT. I is integrity. It's a very simple concept. My father drilled this into both my brother and my ears when we were growing up. He said, if a man doesn't have his word, he's got nothing.
Yeah.
And it's shocking how many people that I've seen in my career that have said things for the sake of closing a sale,
Mhm.
or getting the deal across the line, or whatever it is. I speak about in my book the idea that there are many examples that I've also seen where people have risen to lofty positions in the global, in the world,
Yeah.
without necessarily having a strong sense of integrity. But
Mm.
my experience has led me to believe that without integrity, your success is not long lived. It's short lived, and it's a lack of integrity absolutely can lead you to finding short term success. But in my life, I have certainly shot for a lot deeper than that. It's hard to sell things. It's hard to operate a business. It's hard to start a business if you have integrity. I have found, anyways, that a long-term, more sustainable sense of success has been achieved. And then, of
Mm.
course, the last one, the most important S of the two in SPRUCTIS is sales. A story that I like to tell, a story I told in my book as well. A guy comes to me and he says, Leigh, I want to start a bakery. And I said, well, tell me about your sales strategy. And he says, well, I'm just going to let the cakes and the pastry speak for themselves because I've won awards here, there, left, right, and center. I'm the best baker that's ever walked the face of the planet. I said, okay, great. 11 months later, the guy was out of business because he didn't focus on sales. So doesn't matter whether you're a butcher, a baker, or a candlestick maker, if you can't sell your product, it's that exchange of monetary documents for your goods or services that lead to your ability to sustain that business. So that was a fairly quick run through of the topics that we talk about. And obviously in each part of the book, I break down into various other anecdotal stories and strategies that I have learned the hard way. You either win or you learn, I like to also say. So I've made
Wow.
a tremendous
That's
number of mistakes. And go ahead.
weird. It's really weird to hear somebody else say that.
You say it all the time.
I say I either win or I learn. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
it.
great.
That's it. So yeah, that's the breakdown of the book. So thanks for letting me.
No, I love it. I really resonate with that. Just going through it, some of the things that popped out to me, you were talking about having smarter people, and yeah, if you don't have systems, processes, and redundancy, you're vulnerable, and
Absolutely.
you can be in a really dangerous spot. And we have a client that he had like 300 doors in his property management business, and he lost one key team member, and then his entire team fell apart, and he realized that person was carrying everybody.
Yeah.
And so he laid everybody else off, and so he had total team turnover twice
Wow.
in like a really short time period, in like months. And so his hair was on fire. He was
Yeah.
and so we had to help him build a hiring system, but and then make sure we get good people. But a lot of companies build teams, but they don't realize, and they think they need processes. I call it the process myth, but what I find is usually they just need better people,
Fair.
people that have integrity, people that share their values. And when that's off, they're always spending way too much money on people. So
Yeah, absolutely. On that exact note, I was a recruiter in New York and Vancouver in the very late 90s and early 2000s. And very quickly, early in my career, I found that there was two types of hiring managers. One, when we brought them what we called a rock star, was a super
mm,
high-end candidate for a position. When we brought a rock star to the table, one type, uh, which was, of course, the very successful type, was the one that embraced them and was excited about bringing this wildly intelligent person into the fold of their business.
yeah.
And it always led to sustainable long-term growth and that kind of result. Whereas you had the other type of hiring manager that was paranoid that this new amazing person was going to steal their job, was going to make them look bad.
Mm,
And it's just a awful. I just did not like to work with that type of hiring manager at all. So you're very right. The idea that surrounding yourself with those right people, it is the kind of decision that one makes that allows you to build those systems and processes in place. But finding the right people is key to the success in any business.
mm.
Absolutely, I found.
Yeah, very true. It's really interesting. We see that even with clients, that if they're positive active versus being negative active, meaning they're actively trying to figure out how to make things work, how this could work, they're looking through a positive lens versus actively finding flaw or fault or sabotaging. They prove themselves right either way
Yeah.
in our own programs. And so the positive active clients are the ones we filter and look for, right? You mentioned urgency. I had a problem with sales for a bit, and I had tons of stuff in our pipeline. We were having lots of great conversations. Everybody loved what our offer was, yet nobody was closing. And it was simply because we lacked questions around urgency. And so just adding in the element of urgency really ramped up sales. It was just questions like, why would it matter for you to do this now? Or does it even matter at all? And letting them figure out and find the reason there might be some urgency. So that made a massive difference. Communication, I love that. Speaking with people rather than talking to Yeah, if you're not having a conversation, then you're not learning and you're not listening.
I agree.
Um, and the last thing you want to be as a CEO or a boss or an owner of a business is the emperor with no clothes, where everybody just says yes to everything that you say, and
Yeah.
everybody comes to you and asks you to do all the thinking for them. And this is where business owners build a team. They do it blindly or unknowingly initially, but they don't understand, why won't my team just think for themselves? Well, you designed it that way.
Hey, you have not empowered them to do so.
Right. And so, yeah, because the safest thing in the world is to have you do the thinking for them. Then they can't get fired for doing what you told them to do,
Right.
But yeah, empowering them to do it and motivating them to do it. And then you mentioned technology. Lots of people are leaning into AI now. Integrity, I think, is paramount, because there's nothing greater than character to elevate somebody. If somebody has great character, they rise up in any organization, any system they're in, any friend group that they're in. Integrity, like character, people recognize that this is a person that they can rely on, that gets things done, that has their life together. In any situation that my wife and I are in, we tend to always rise to the top. And I believe the secret is just good character. And
Yeah.
the shortcut is a shortcut in life. I'm really inspired by one of my mentors, Sharon Srivatsa. He was the CEO of Real. He's now the CEO of the Alex and Layla Hermosi's company, acquisition.com. But I was in a little mastermind with him, and he's this gentleman that came to the US from India, got robbed right as he entered the US. He convinced the person mugging him, taking his money, to give him a little bit back so he could book a ride somewhere and get a train or a bus or something. And even when he was in school, he was like dumpster diving to get food out, and now he's a billionaire, right? And so he always found ways to be the best, and he always has operated with integrity at the core of that. And who he was is what really elevated him, I believe, to where he's at now. He's also a brilliant thinker, but I think it's a sign of intelligence to live with integrity. So,
Amen.
yeah. So, and then sales. Your story reminds me of the E-Myth Revisited. It's like, I think they almost use that exact sort of situation where it says, just because you can bake a cake doesn't mean you can run a business. And there's accounting and bookkeeping and marketing and sales and all this stuff that is not the technical work. In fact, if you're going to start a business as a baker or a property manager, your goal is to not be the technician doing the work. Your goal is not to be the property manager.
Yeah.
You hire the property manager. You hire the baker. And he loved baking, but did he really want to give that up and hire somebody to do the baking? I don't know. So, yeah. Really, really great stuff. So I love mindset. Let's get into this mindset of delusional optimism. Tell me about this.
Okay. Really, the things that I have learned over the last decades of reading and going to school and living life and traveling around the world, they all come down to that thing, the mindset thing.
Mm,
I love the expression. I tell my 15-year-old son this all the time. If you think you can or you cannot, you're absolutely correct, right?
right.
How you set yourself up for success. And I talk about the idea also, it's not just about how you think, but it's how you prepare to think. Are you set? Are you established? Are you
Mm,
ready to take on the next challenges that as an entrepreneur come to you all the time? A way that I always like to describe, I can't remember who said this, but I've latched on to this quote. It's being an entrepreneur is like waking up every morning and getting hit in the face with a baseball bat and having the occasional pieces of positive reinforcement to remind you to keep going. Okay. So this concept that those that have not owned and operated their own businesses tend to not see as deeply as fellow entrepreneurs is that there's always going to be another fire to put out. And it's not, I believe in the law of attraction as well. So it's not like you're attracting these things, but you have to understand that they're going to come to you no matter what you do. There's going to be a challenge. There's no safety net in running your own business. You are the one that is responsible for making the decisions to push things forward. And when we talk about delusional optimism, it's really setting your mindset in a proper way to establish that you are going to do that thing. Some people call it manifestation. There's other words for it. So I was saying, in all the things that I've read, I'm not reinventing these things. I am just saying, look, this is a collection of ideas that I have cobbled together and learned about over the last several, decades that have just given me blatant positive feedback that what I am doing is at least the right, decision. And making that right decision 51% of the time is what you have to do to find that success, right? That shouldn't be the goal, but that's the bare minimum. In terms of this delusional optimism, it comes down to the car that you're going to get, the relationship that you want, the house that you want. And it's not all material things by any stretch of the imagination, but the body that you've wanted, all of these kinds of things. When it comes to a sales topic or a sales call, I know statistically there's 0% chance that I am closing all of the deals that I go into. But I can promise you, the little pep talk that I give myself prior to going into any sales call is, you've closed this. It's done. I'm not looking past the process that needs to occur to get there, but I am absolutely seeing that sale closed. You can apply this to so many elements of your life. Doesn't matter what it is. If you want it, the only thing from stopping you from getting there is you. And if you truly believe that you can achieve the things that you want to achieve. I was actually just in Italy a few days ago meeting with a good friend of mine who's one of the best drummers in the world. I've watched his career develop over the last kind of 10, 15 years. And he has taken into account so many positive things about becoming just a world-class drummer. He just knows what it takes to get there. With delusional optimism comes this concept of living in realityville, right? Yeah. If you just, some people have referred to this idea as, it was in that book, The Secret. When I've talked to people about that book before, they've said, so is it that I just close my eyes and wish really hard and then everything comes together? No, it's not. It's about clearly defining what it is that you want, maybe being deluded about it. And it's ironic maybe to talk about living in realityville when I'm preaching this concept of delusional optimism. But the idea is, if you truly believe you can get it, you're not going to get it 100% of the time. That's where the delusional nature comes in. But then if you also embrace the concept that it's just you and it takes hard work to get anything done, whether it's being a drummer, whether it's being a baker, whether it's being a property manager, going from 5 doors to 5,000 doors, you have to put in the work. But if you can see yourself not even closing a deal, but achieving anything that you put your mind to it, as opposed to, I don't know if this is a good idea. There's a lot of soul sucking that comes out of family members and friends that are negative and that kind of thing that could take you away from achieving your dreams and your goals and aspirations. You get the point, though. That's the entire concept is truly, despite all odds, believing that you're going to achieve exactly what you want to achieve. Make sense?
Yeah, totally. Everybody listening can hear the passion in your voice when you're talking about this idea of delusional optimism. I think it ties back into what I had mentioned about being positive active. You have to be optimistic. You have to believe it before you can achieve it. And
love that one.
I feel like it's as simple as turning on a light switch. If you don't believe the light switch works, you're not even going to try turning it on. And it's not hard to turn on a light switch, but you won't even attempt it if you're like, I don't think there's power in this building.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be hard. There is a place certainly for hard work, but just being optimistic certainly makes everything less hard, because we're creating our own limitation, our own barriers. We're not trying things that could work or could be. And I've seen, business owners that were delusionally optimistic. Like I had a client who decided he felt it was hard getting to his first 100 doors. And so he decided, I want to be at 1,000 by the end of this year.
Amazing.
And he did it. He went and walked into property management businesses, met the business owner, shook hands and said, "Hey, I would love to buy your company." And he found a 900 door owner that was willing to sell. And he was at 1,000 doors by the end of that year.
Amazing.
And so, but if he didn't have that level of optimism and that sort of impossible goal, if you will, he wouldn't have tried that. He would have done what everybody else does. Well, I'm going to see if I can be realistic and get 100 doors this year. I'm a really big fan of Ben Hardy, Dr. Benjamin Hardy. He's in a master man, and he shared with us down in Mexico his newest book, which is The Science of Scaling, and he talks about in this these different sort of goals, and I kind of built my own mental model around this. These 3 levels of goal setting, but the basic idea is level 1 is their survival goals. These are where it's terrible to live, right? We make bad decisions usually from this place. It's like, I need to get money in. And the next level goals are realistic goals. That's level 2. And so this is where we focus on something, but this is where our brain kind of caps our thinking because we already know how to do it. It's just work harder. And so we're not a visionary at that point. But when we shift into impossible goals, the goal becomes a tool to change our thinking, he talks about in his book. And so he says we either use time by collapsing time down to something that makes the goal impossible, or we make the goal so much bigger, like 10x bigger, to make it impossible. But either way, it changes the path and it changes our level of thinking, and then we become a visionary. And when we hold space for these goals that others would say are impossible, because if we focus on just what's realistic, then the challenge is we cap our own thinking because our brain already knows how to do that. And
Absolutely.
It's like, right. And so, so this really ties into that. I love that. I love that so much. And I've seen people, when they shift into having a big enough goal, they become optimistic. If they can just hold space for a big enough goal that is currently impossible to their current realistic negative brain, it forces them to shift into what I call a playground, where we're playing with ideas. Whereas when we're realistic goals are like a yardstick by which we beat ourselves up with because we rarely hit them. It's always a linear, difficult path of a lot of hard work and multiple steps, if that makes sense. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I love this so much. So tell me, what is a pleasure utility determinant? This is a big word here.
We called it PUD. A dear friend of mine, Dave, and myself, when we were in university in the early 90s, and I know I'm really dating myself, but nonetheless, it was this idea that, of course, started as a joke, but then worked its way into our business lives later. In those days, it was not about being cheap. Okay. It's not about getting the thing for the cheapest. Okay. It's saying, though, and this is the easiest way to describe it in a very rudimentary way. If, let's say, for example, there are 2 bars side by side, and of course, back in those days, all we thought about was going out on the town and meeting girls and having a good time on the night. In bar A, there's a beer that cost $5 back in the day. Let's say it was $2.50, but for this purpose, it was $5. In bar B, the beer is $10. Okay. But the experience of pleasure, which is the most subjective thing in the world, in the book, we substitute that word for success. But the experience of pleasure in the second bar has to be, if you're defining it in this very linear, one-dimensional way, okay, has to be twice that which you achieve in the first bar, or else the first bar is the natural choice. It's, of course, a metaphor, and there's a million different levers that can factor into this, again, very subjective definition, but you get the point. The amount of effort or energy or dollars that you spend to achieve a particular thing for 1 or 2 or 3 choices, up to an infinite number of choices, if you think about things in that frame, right, it allows you to more easily make decisions about what to do. And I speak all the time that life is just a series of wagers. Every single day you're making choices whether to go A or B in terms of a different direction. And we need things to help us make choices in this world. It's just one, like I said, started as an amusing thing, but factored into business decisions. It's not always about getting the thing for the cheapest. It's about deriving the most amount of pleasure or success from the decision that you've made based on a number of parameters. Make sense?
Yeah, I love it. When people get too hyper fixated on one currency, and one of my mentors talked about, you dropped few of them right here. His name's Alex Sharfin, and he talks about the 5 currencies of time, energy, focus, cash, and effort.
Mm.
And these things we have to invest in life and in our own business. And yeah, and a lot of business owners I've noticed will continually invest and focus on the business, but not on taking care of themselves.
Mm.
How they initially build their teams. This is always the solopreneur transitioning to having a team. I call this the team sand trap after they get past the solopreneur sand trap. But in this team sand trap, they always build a team around the way they thought as a solopreneur.
Right.
And and so they always end up with the wrong team because they're building this entire team around themselves, but they are showing up as the wrong puzzle piece at the center. And because they're not focused on what they want, they're not focused on what they need. They're just continually giving the business what it needs. And then the business becomes almost like their master. It's like a high chair tyrant flinging food in their face. You know, if anybody has kids listening, you should not be just giving this thing everything that it always asks for or needs or wants to the exclusion or the detriment of yourself. You got to be taking care of yourself. That's the other lens. And so I like this idea of figuring out, all right, how do I figure out the pleasure utility determinant related to this thing I'm making a decision about? How is this going to benefit or serve me? And is this giving me more of what I call the 4 reasons for starting a business of more fulfillment, more freedom, more contribution, and more support? If it's not giving us more of those 4 things, then we're losing those. And it's very easy to make more and more money and have less freedom, have less fulfillment, have less contribution, and have less support. And then we end up very miserable, even though we're in control of it all. So we just made a tactical bad mistake. We designed the business the wrong way, and it's our choice how we design it. So, so how do you calculate pleasure utility determinant? Do you have some ways you've kind of mentally started figuring this out, or what questions do you ask yourself?
It literally started with decisions about beer in nightclubs or pubs, and factored into other things. I'll give you another example in a more realistic life. My father, who I have one hero in my life, it's my father. And I always say this: if I can leave this earth with half as much respect for my son as I have for my father, I will have succeeded as a man and as a
Yeah.
father. I love my dad to death, but he'd walk a mile to save a nickel on parking. He would. Absolutely. But in 1986, I think he paid like $2,600 for a VCR, and he still
Yeah.
has it today, and he
Uh,
still uses it today. So,
okay.
right, I know these things are coming back as material, acquisition type stories, but
Yeah.
I think it just epitomizes that concept so brilliantly in
Yeah.
that you got a guy that is so cheap but seeks, I call him frugal. He seeks value. And if you seek value, whether it's in people, whether it's in your business, whether it's in something that you acquire, whether it's an experience that you were having, um, and again, it's not value for money, it's value for those other currencies that you just explained, right? Your time, your energy, your focus, these kinds
Yeah.
of things. It's a almost a comical concept, but if you apply it in a serious manner and you just allow, it's just a tiny little tool to allow yourself to become in a positive mindset framework. It's again, I mentioned this very early on in our chat here today. It's not about just thinking, it's about how you prepare to think. It's just yet another one of these little tools that helps you prepare to think about how you're going to solve the series of wagers that are put in front of you every single day as an entrepreneur or as a life partner with your wife or your spouse, whatever it happens to be, or as a parent. All of these things come down to making decisions, and we need to factor in various tools to help us make the right ones.
Yeah, got it. So, I mean, just even asking ourselves, this business decision that I'm looking at making, or this life decision, would this bring me more joy or would it take away? Because if we look through the wrong lens, like what if we're always like, what would be cost less
Right.
or what would be
Dangerous.
cheapest?
That's right.
And we're focused on the wrong thing. And I don't think the goal is to save a bunch of money and be miserable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a very simple concept, but like everything else in the world, the idea that you pull one lever down and there's 100 levers on the wall. There's a lot of discussion in the current political climate of the world where people are led to believe that there are simply two levers. Pull one down and it's going to pull the other one up and it's going to solve it. Clearly not the case in business, in life, in politics, in anything else. But this idea that you allow yourself tools to help make the series of choices every day that will lead you to a greater likelihood of success. I will embrace all of those. Another thing I like to say all the time is you don't know what you don't know. There's a million brilliant people out there, millions, surely,
Yeah.
of brilliant people out there that I could learn from. I love to hear these types of um, you know uh, tools that they have acquired in their lives to help them make the right decisions. Again, this is but one of many.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it reminds me of this story about this fisherman and the entrepreneur.
Oh,
And the
I
entrepreneur
love this story.
and
Love it.
he's, hey, man, you can make so much more money if you just get some additional boats and you do this and start doing some marketing and all this. And and if you catch more fish, you can sell them, buy a bigger boat, do all this. And then the fisherman just kept going along with this logic. And then what? And then after that, you could eventually move to a quiet village, sleep late, fish for a little fun, play with your children, spend your evenings drinking, laughing with your friends. Oh, basically what you're doing now, right?
Big fan of that story. I love it. I have a friend who lives about 4 hours from Vancouver, and I love him to death. And what he does is he's a teacher. He golfs in the summer. He skis and snowboards with his kids in the winter, and he's the happiest guy I know. That's what he does. And I've talked to him before about using him as a different example for that fisherman metaphor. It's like, Devin, you're there already. He knows it too. He's the happiest guy in the world. So he's got
Yeah.
all these type A personality friends that are chasing the buck and going for the next thing and what have you. He's like, I'm here already. Why do I need to do those things? I cannot argue with you one little bit. So love that story about the fisherman.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. I love it. And so, a lot of times we think something else is going to make us feel a certain way.
Hmm.
And we think, oh, if I had this amount of money, I would feel a certain way. If I had this car, I would feel a certain way. Usually boils down to a feeling. And then the question is, eventually we maybe figure out as we mature, hey, can I just choose to feel a certain way rather than trying to fill this hole constantly, right? Can I just shift what's keeping me from feeling that way? So, well, this is awesome. So I don't know if we've missed anything else that we were planning on covering. You said the best free technology tools. So what are some of your favorite tools? And get into that, and then we can.
Yeah,
Um,
great question.
oh,
We have give you an example. We have a restaurant in Vancouver. You can see it over my shoulder here. We're just looking out onto Granville Island in Vancouver, British Columbia. And to give you an indication, I drink my own Kool-Aid. This business has generated over $52 million in revenue since we opened it. And we have moved every penny of that business through a comprehensive Google Sheets driven framework. Okay.
okay.
When I went to university, I remember the day I was taking computers for business, technology for business. And the prof came in. This is how old I am again. This is killing me, dating myself this way. But he introduced a little piece of software called Microsoft Excel to us. And he said, this is going to change your business life when you
Yeah.
have it, whatever it happens to be. And of course, back then, my mindset was not anywhere near where it needed to be to think like an entrepreneur. What I did was what I'd learned in high school: do the exercises, get the grade. It was a means to an end, not
Yeah.
learning about learning. It was just doing the task. And I very much regret not taking much more from my university experience and actually learning some things and applying them to future, business endeavors. That said, he taught us Excel, and anyone on here has obviously used some version of a spreadsheet in their life. The
Mhm.
advent of Google Sheets, when you were able to link together virtually an infinite number of sheets to update automatically when you update a cell on a particular sheet or a series or an array of cells, that changed the game. We have built an incredibly comprehensive Google Sheets driven operating system for a business that allows us to stay on top of profitability. And if you get a Gmail account, it's free. So
Yeah.
that's on the consulting side of things, and that's what I do for my consulting business, is teach people that process that says, hey, I want to make myself redundant, and not in the good way that I talk about in the book, but in the way that you have to stop paying me for giving you this knowledge. I'm not here, even though I have a SaaS business in my property management software and access control software company called Monify, which of course, as you know, recurring revenue is the best kind of revenue. But that said, in the consulting side of things, I don't think I'd be a very good consultant if the goal was to have someone use me every month for the rest of their lives. That's not good. So making myself redundant by showing them these free tools that allow them to operate their business in a way that once they get up to speed won't cost them anything else. I love talking about also this idea of, especially in the hospitality industry, we are pitched on a new piece of bespoke software 3 times a month. It's going to change the face of your business. It's going to change the game. Again, slightly ironic being that I'm in the software sales game with Monify, but you get the point here. There are tools that exist today that are free that will allow you complete insight into your business, allowing you to know exactly what your financial health is at any given moment, which will, of course, lead you to being yet another tool to allow you to make those decisions about your business to help sustain its survivability or its growth.
What do you feel would be, for those listening that really want to have better financial health, what would you feel are maybe the best tools or resources, books for them to kind of start figuring this out?
I mean, I'm going to pump SPRUCTIS's tires a little bit.
Yeah.
If you go to Amazon and check out SPRUCTIS, SPRUCTIS, you can see the book and it'll give you a taste of exactly what this framework is. And, we are the easiest people in the world to get a hold of at spructis.com. I can be found on LinkedIn at Leigh, Leigh, which is Angman. And I would love to tell people about this because it's if you have the capacity to operate a spreadsheet, we can show you how to do that. Now that the self, gratifying type promotion is done, I will say this, that I am absolutely a student of learning. I've mentioned this more than once. I think the only way I've found success, surround myself with people that are smarter than I am. I don't know the answers. I love my entire friend group is positive minded, brilliant, educated type people. Not to take anything away from, some of the guys that I still know from high school that like to go to the same pub that they have been going to for 30 years and every Friday and Saturday night. Nothing to take that away from that type of person, but there are a million great authors out there. There are a million great books out there that allow you look at Atomic Habits, you look at Think and Grow Rich, look at How to Win Friends and Influence People. There's a great book that I read recently called Unreasonable Hospitality. Will Guidara, I believe, is the name of the author. I hope I got the title of the book right. But nonetheless, it's always about books. It's always about going to YouTube and listening to what Warren Buffett has to say about things, listening to people that are clearly brilliant that are out there. There is an infinite number of areas that you can go to educate yourself and allow your own personal growth. I don't ever stop doing that. The minute that you think you're the smartest guy in the room, you're wrong, but B, you're in the wrong room, right? So continue to grow, keep an open mind, learn from people, have a thirst for education, and just continue to try to grow your career. I like to believe I'm going to be able to do that until the day I drop dead.
Yeah, me too. Leigh, pleasure having you on. Plug some of your URLs, etc. How can people get in touch or learn about you and all your different stuff? Go ahead, and you've given us some URLs, but go ahead and do that again.
Yeah, I'll summarize. For the property, obviously we spoke a lot. I've listened to a couple of your episodes on property management. There's a tremendous amount of fantastic resources there, and clearly this is what you're focusing on. If people want to learn about the offerings that we have in the property management software side of things, you can check out Mondofi, MONDOFI.com. You can learn about the book on Amazon or at SPRUCTIS.com, SPRUCTIS.com, and reach out on LinkedIn. I'm the easiest guy in the world to get a hold of. It's Leigh Angman, LEIGHANGMAN. Would love to learn from some of the brilliant entrepreneurs that you spoke. I would love to meet this guy that created his big, hairy, audacious goal to get 1,000 doors. Like, that's the kind of guy that jacks me up, that I love to hang around with. That's like, we're going to do this crazy thing that everybody has told me, no, I can't do. I want that kind of positive energy in my life. And I work very hard to surround myself with that kind of person.
Well, for those that are listening, if you're a property management entrepreneur and you're listening and you felt stuck or stagnant and you want to take your property management business to the next level, this is the type of room we curate here at DoorGrow in our mastermind. So reach out to us at doorgrow.com. And if you'd like a free training on how to get unlimited leads for free, text the word leads to 512-648-4608. Also, you can join our free community by going to doorgrowclub.com. And if you want tips, tricks, or ideas, and to learn about DoorGrow's offers and what we're up to, subscribe to our newsletter by going to doorgrow.com/subscribe. And if you found this episode even a little bit helpful, which I hope you did, because this was really great stuff. Thank you, Leigh. Then don't forget to subscribe. Leave us a review on whatever channel you saw this on. We'd really appreciate it. And until next time, remember, the slowest path to growth is to do it alone. So let's grow together.